Good afternoon, everyone. Joining us on Joe Diego Soho. My name is was joined by the Captain Youngster or Kid Tony on Twitter, whatever you prefer. How you doing, Captain?
Doing well. I'm not going to. Well, I do actually have kind of a little mini story to tell. I shouldn't say mini story.
What?
Well, it kind of is, but I do.
Something happened in the youngsters' world.
Well, not really. See, I'm not sure if it happened. So I'll leave that as a little tease for people to, I guess, tune into our Saturday show. Troy and I do a number of shows. So I'm going to leave this mini story because I'm hyped up to do Alex Hornibrook. Everyone knows that by now, and yeah. Alex Hornibrook and Big Ten basketball in the final week, regular season week of college basketball.
Well,
for the Big Ten.
Tell them how to find our Saturday show.
If you follow us at Youngster Old Man on Twitter, that's where you can find absolutely everything because Troy does a magnificent job. Being the old man he is, he still does a magnificent job on social media, no matter where you look. So
yeah, not bad for an old fogey. Not bad,
no.
Not bad. I can navigate my way on those social media platforms pretty well.
Yeah, I would agree. But yeah, follow us at Youngster Old Man. That's definitely the number one way to do it because Troy posts all of our links. And basically Saturdays, when is it exactly? Is it Saturday? Saturday at noon. It's WXED 107.3 if you're in the kind of Pennsylvania area as a whole, but that doesn't narrow it down entirely.
Well, I'll put it this way, youngster. The one station that you can stream live and you can actually get on iTunes is 96.7 The Mix. So that one's at noon. WXED's at 11. WLDJ is also at noon, and then WBPS is at 10 a.m. However, the two latter do not have live streaming. So if you want to listen to the show, and I know we're getting off subject here, if you follow us on Youngster Old Man, every weekend by Sunday night, the archive show will be posted. We post that to SoundCloud. You have 1 week to listen to it, and then we take it down and put up the new week. So I'll tell you what, Youngster, we're pretty busy. We are really busy. Yeah,
we do a number of shows together. So follow us on Twitter at Youngster Old Man. That's all one word, at Youngster Old Man, to find all the stuff that we do, not just Big Ten related, but everything in the sports world that's going on that matters. We talk about it. So that's kind of our jobs there. So unless you got anything, Troy, I'm ready to talk about Alex Hornibrook.
No, unlike you have a story to tell. I have no story to tell today. my day. I said this last week. Maybe my mom was looking down upon me from heaven. Because remember last week I said I just want a day where I can get in my car, go to work, and go home.
Yeah. So
far, and now the day's not over, but so far, no. So good. Oh, I guess I can. I always can find a story. So out here in the Northeast, they said we're supposed to have this mega storm again, right? And now I guess New York and Boston really got hammered hard. But they were saying in Pittsburgh it started out 4 inches. It actually started out 2 to 4 inches. Then it went 4 inches. Then I was working my weekend job this weekend. The guy that I work with said, they're saying 10 inches. And it was coming down pretty good on Saturday night around 7:30. And there might have been maybe close to an inch of accumulation. I was thinking, youngster, I'm like, you know what? If I shovel now, I won't have to shovel as much when I wake up at 2:30 in the morning. So I go out and I shovel. I don't have much to shovel. It took me like a half hour. I go and I shovel the sidewalk and the front walk and all that stuff, and it looked real nice. Go to bed, wake up at 2:30, thinking, I've got to put on my winter clothes, go do some shoveling, put my coffee on. So I put my coffee on, and where my kitchen is, you can't see the front. So I had no idea really what was going on. I look out the front door. Hardly any accumulation, youngster. I used my big broom and just broomed it off. Just broomed it.
There you go.
Yeah, so they scared us. The media scared us again. Okay, let's go. Because I really want to talk about Alex Hornibrook.
Yeah, soon to be senior quarterback, leader of the Wisconsin Badgers, and all that good stuff. Well, no that's not going to be the case because he put his name into the transfer portal. And for those that don't know, basically nowadays, you can, if you're a student athlete, you can submit your name into the transfer portal and your school can do absolutely nothing about it. Now, other schools see your name pop up in the transfer portal as soon as they pop it up, and they see that you want to transfer. And they can inquire and boom, go. Your school, Alex Hornibrook, and Wisconsin can do nothing about it. He doesn't even have to inform his school if he doesn't want to. I would assume that you would. I'm sure that 99.9% of these athletes do inform their school, but you don't have to. Like, your school can do nothing about it. So it's just, it is what it is. Hey, my name's in the portal.
That is a far cry from when I coached college soccer, youngster.
Yeah.
What is the world is coming to, and you know how much I love the idea of all of these players and athletes just not being happy and deciding to just, I'm going to quit. That's what I call it. I'm going to quit. I'm not good enough to compete against somebody else. So I'm going to quit. That's what I call it. But carry on.
One thing I want to say about this is that, Wisconsin, and we've talked about this since a long time now, probably almost a year. But Graham Mertz has signed and committed with Wisconsin. He's a freshman. He's, I think, the number 3 rated. Depends on what site you look at. But regardless, he is a very, very highly touted quarterback coming into the Wisconsin system, and he's the highest rated recruit as far as quarterbacks go for Wisconsin ever. So he's Mr. Kansas in football. He won the Under Armour All-American MVP. He can throw the ball. And this is, for Wisconsin, to put it, bluntly, I mean, this is their best quarterback prospect they've ever had. And, Russell Wilson, when he transferred from NC State, it's like, oh, my God, look at this Badgers offense. And they were unbelievable because they finally had that legitimate thrower from the pocket and a guy who could come out of play action coming off a strong running game that Wisconsin literally always has every single season, no matter who's on the offensive line or running back or fullback or tight end. It doesn't matter. They always have a strong running game. You just need not necessarily a ridiculous Heisman Trophy winning, throw it all over the field quarterback, but just someone who can not necessarily manage the game, but just make accurate throws from the pocket and build off play action and make accurate throws. Doesn't have to be Peyton Manning, doesn't have to be, any phenomenal college quarterback. Just be really solid, and you'll be a very good Wisconsin team. And that's why you just need
to make a play here and there. You need to make a 3rd and 10 once in a while.
Yeah,
that's what you need to do.
Yeah, you can't be. I was just going to say you can't be a below-average quarterback and just survive because of the Badgers' running game and offensive line in front of you. Because eventually you have to make a play against Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State to actually play and compete and beat the big boys consistently. Your quarterback has to be able to make a play at some point, no matter.
And you know what, Kevin? I know we're talking about Hornibrook, and I'm probably going to get all over him in this show. But when you look at it, there were times where he did that. But he was just inconsistent. He never developed a consistency. And there was never like a real confidence on 3rd and long where I would actually be like, okay, we got a chance. Every time it was 3rd and long, it's like, okay, well, come on, defense. And they didn't even run a play yet. It's like, well, the defense is going to have to step up now. He just never got consistent at it. But there were games where he proved that he could do it. That's what's my most frustrating moments with Alex Hornibrook, is that he couldn't get consistent. And if he could have, there were times where he showed that he can get a 3rd and 8 or a 3rd and 12. But it didn't happen play in and play out. Nor is any quarterback going to convert 100%. But most of the time it was like, okay, punt, defense, come on, do your thing.
Yeah. One point I wanted to bring up too was this, and this is kind of my main talking point with it. Obviously, it's not necessarily breaking news, but it's big news in the Big Ten football world that Hornibrook's going to be transferring. But so this opens up the door for Jack Coan potentially, who we saw a little bit of last year. Obviously, it opens the door for Graham Mertz, which we talked about last year during the season that, hey, can't wait for Mertz to come in and take over Hornibrook's job. And that was last season when Mertz was a senior in high school. So we've been talking about this for a while. And Hornibrook, here's kind of the real point I wanted to make, was that Clemson last season faced a very similar situation with this. Not exactly the same, but Trevor Lawrence was coming in as a freshman, and now everyone knows who Trevor Lawrence is, Clemson's quarterback. Phenomenal. Going to be an NFL quarterback as long as, everything plays out as it should. He was the number 1 overall recruit last season as a quarterback. And we saw why toward the end of the year especially. But Graham Mertz is not that highly touted, but some people still think he's not the 3rd or 4th best. Some people think he's the best quarterback in his class. Regardless, you've got a big-time freshman quarterback coming in, and Kelly Bryant was going to be the senior quarterback at Clemson. In his junior year, a couple years prior, he showed that he was decent, but not good enough. Like, they got hammered against Alabama. I think it was in the semifinal 2 years ago. He just couldn't move the ball, really. So Kelly Bryant's fine. He's decent. But once you go against Alabama, once you go against a really good defense, then it shows that he's not great. And if you want to consistently win in the college football playoff or get to the college football playoff, again, your quarterback has to be able to be better than just decent. He's got to make plays at times. That's just the way it rolls. If you've got a Heisman Trophy running back and NFL lineman ahead of you, at some point you're going to have to pass the ball. Because at some point you're going to have a penalty. Sometimes you're going to have a 3rd and 13 somewhere. You just got to move the chains. And your quarterback has to throw it. And Kelly Bryant chose to stay at Clemson. And I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but he chose to stay at Clemson, go into his senior year. Trevor Lawrence going into his freshman year as the number 1 recruit. Hey, I'm here to basically take your job. Be the next guy at Clemson and move on to the NFL. That's what's going to happen. And so Kelly Bryant played like a game or 2, and then he got benched basically, and Trevor Lawrence came in, and it was just his job. And so Kelly Bryant essentially lost out on last year. So a point you can make for Alex Hornibrook leaving now is that, you know what, he's ahead of the curve. He knows he's decent. He knows he is what he is. And if he's seen Graham Mertz throw, if he's thrown with him, if he's heard any inkling around the program that, hey, it's a 50-50 shot. It's an open job. He's probably thinking, my God, I know this kid's more talented than me. I'm a senior. I know the playbook. I know the guys. But do they even have my back 100%? Probably not, realistically. Like, does Wisconsin fully believe in Alex Hornibrook 100% to lead them to a Big Ten title in the college football playoff next year? Probably not. 100% of the locker room? I highly doubt it. And I'm sure he knows that. And I'm sure he knows, again, that Graham Mertz is more talented. So you can make the case that he is being ahead of the curve here. And if you want to say, that Troy brought up the word quit, if you want to quit on your team and transfer before anything even plays out, and I think that's what's funny, is that, Alex Hornibrook essentially is transferring out because this guy is coming in, and he knows he is out-talented.
The scaredy cat.
I was going to say, it's the same type of thing at Ohio State. It's not the exact same thing, but it's the same situation where Tate Martell was going to be a sophomore this year. He was a freshman, got a little playing time under Dwayne Haskins in mop-up mode, basically. And Justin Fields, the number 2 recruit behind Trevor Lawrence, right behind him a year ago, went to Georgia, found out he's not going to have the job for a couple of years. He'd have to sit and wait until Jake Fromm moves on to the NFL, and he didn't want to wait. He said, nope, going to Ohio State. And Tate Martell's like, and I'm out of here, because he knew he'd probably lose the job. And it's the same thing with Alex Hornibrook. So these older quarterbacks, and Tate Martell's only a sophomore, but technically he's older than Justin Fields at Ohio State now. But these quarterbacks know they're probably going to get beaten out for the job, and so they're leaving. And so, yeah, scaredy cat, absolutely. I don't know if you want to call it smart. I don't know if you want to call it a quitter. I don't know if you want to call him scared. But that's basically the situation that's happening at Wisconsin now.
All right, so I'm going to give you my 2 cents worth. The old man always has a couple cents in his pocket. So I don't know what went on between Coach Christ and Hornibrook. Part of this might be Paul Christ flat out telling Hornibrook, Mertz is the guy. He's coming in. He's going to start from day one. You're free to go do whatever you want. I highly doubt that that's a conversation that was had. I doubt it, just being a former coach. But benefit of the doubt. I'm going to throw that out there. Maybe that did happen. Like I said, I highly doubt it. Highly doubt that a coach is just going to go in and tell the guy, yeah, no shot. Thanks for all you did for us, but you're not even, you're the backup. So Mertz is going to come in, supposedly. He did sign, so he's going to show up. I guess I can take that as validity.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go from the standpoint of a coach. So now my player decides he wants to transfer because I went out and I did my job. I recruited a great quarterback to come into the program to help me win a Big Ten title, possibly do enough to get into the college football playoff. When you got it, we've talked about a youngster. Quarterback play is very important in the game of football, and it is probably times 5 or 10 in college football. So Paul Christ went and did his job. And now you got a player that's unhappy. Oh, my gosh. I see all these parallels between college football, professional sports, whine, crybaby this, crybaby that, I'm not happy, I got to go. So maybe this is part of the reason I don't coach anymore, and I'm being 100% serious.
Yeah.
Paul Christ did his job. As a coach, your job is to win. It is not to be everybody's friend on that team. It is not to give everybody equal playing time. Paul Christ signed his contract at Wisconsin to win Big Ten titles, and now with the new college football playoff, get into the college football playoff. That is what his job is. So people want to talk about loyalty, and they want to talk about that coach to player, player to coach. Okay? As a former coach, you do have some loyalty. You're going to do everything in your power to do what's in the best interest of a kid. But that's why I said I highly doubt Paul Christ told me he didn't have a chance at the job.
Yeah.
No way did he do that. So maybe I was being a little sarcastic. When I look at what Hornibrook has done, like you said, you said it so eloquently. This top-notch guy, quarterback, one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Man, he's better than me. Okay? Well, did Wisconsin not have your back? Did Wisconsin not come out and offer you a scholarship? Did they not give you a chance to compete for the starting job? Did you not get that starting job? Did you not play a lot of football games under the tutelage of Paul Christ? And now you're just going to be a baby and get up and move because I don't think I'm good enough. What kind of confidence is that?
Right.
The kid is a freshman. Okay, maybe he's got a great arm, maybe he's a great player, maybe he beats you out. But you didn't even try.
Right.
Now, I know you can't transfer once that happens, but you want to talk about loyalty from a coach?
He could redshirt. He could redshirt. Like, he could play in 4 games and still redshirt.
Exactly. And I was getting to that point, youngster, but you brought it up. Yeah. That is a great point. But, no, he's got to get up and leave the school because he's PO'd because Paul Christ went and did his job. It is part of coaching. I don't know any coach out there that's going to go out there and say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to go out and not recruit guys good enough or guys that are not better than the guys I have. And the thing is, Kevin, I've went out, I coached college. I recruited. Yeah. I had some very good players on my team. So guess where I set the bar when I was looking for a recruit? That level. I want 24 guys like that. So, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go out, and every one of my starters, I'm trying to recruit somebody as good, if not better than you. Why wouldn't I? I don't always get those guys, but that's what I would do. And I understand. I've been a player before, and you feel like, oh, my God, does coach not believe in me, blah, blah, blah. You know what? I learned over the long time. No, it has nothing to do with whether or not coach likes me. It has to do with winning. It has to do with winning games. That's it. So when I look at this, Kevin, people want to say, well, he can go and play. Well, you brought up the point on it then. That's what I was going to say. If he gets beat out and he's not going to play a game, he can redshirt and not even play in a game, then transfer. He'll still have a year of eligibility left. And I get a little irked at this because Hornibrook, like you said, average to above average quarterback at times. Paul Christ had faith to go give this kid a scholarship. And now he's just going to walk out. He's just going to walk out because he doesn't feel he's good enough. And he didn't even try. Didn't even try to compete with this kid. So I could just keep going in circles and rambling about the same thing. As you can tell, I'm not happy about the decision. I love Graham Mertz coming into the program. I love it. Everything I've heard, everything I've seen, yes, this kid is a great quarterback, but he hasn't even played it down in college football yet, so let's not say the Badgers are winning the Big Ten. Let's not say the Badgers are going to the college football playoff. But you also alluded to something. This kid is in a perfect situation. The running back factory Wisconsin is, the offensive line factory that Wisconsin is. I'm not saying this kid's going to have an easy time, but if you're anything of a great quarterback, you could be awesome at Wisconsin because you have all of the tools that you need to be a quarterback. If you have the skill, you're going to have the protection, and you're going to have a running game. So, Mr. Mertz, hopefully you're practicing your play-action pass because you will have the opportunity to do that. What else you got to add? Because I'd really like to get into some basketball, my friend.
And he's going to have a good defense. Like, Wisconsin always has at least a good defense, and they always have at least a really good offensive line and a really good running back. I mean, it's if you're a quarterback and you don't mind colder temperatures at times, I don't know where else you would rather play than Wisconsin because it sets you up perfectly to look good. Like, I'm an Ohio State fan, but if I'm a quarterback at Ohio State and they showed it finally this last year that, hey, we'll actually be throw first if we think we are, that's like never been the case at Ohio State. You know, no matter what quarterback is there. Like Terrell Pryor was there, and it was like maybe 50-50, but they weren't even throw first. He was running a bit because he was a runner. You know, finally they had a legitimate NFL prospect, first-round prospect, pocket passer in Dwayne Haskins, and it's like, yeah, we're going to throw the ball all over the place. As you should, if that's your strong suit. So, anyway, Graham Mertz is set up magnificently well at Wisconsin, and, you know, we'll talk more about, you know, Wisconsin football when the time comes. But it's March 4th as we're recording this. So, basketball is in the air, and Selection Sunday is less than 2 weeks away. Even if you listen to this the second we get done with this podcast, it's still less than 2 weeks away. Like, Selection Sunday is March 17th, 13 days away. Again, we're recording this on the 4th. So if you're listening to this on the 9th.
Do not make me wait till September for March Madness.
No. I'd be very depressed at that point because this is maybe my favorite month of the year. Like, I love Christmas time in general, but March is just, I love March. College, if I had to pick one sport to just watch and, you know, write about, talk about, get paid to do whatever for, college basketball, probably number one for me. So anyway, getting into basketball, almost half an hour later. So I will kind of zoom by recapping because now it's all really about, okay, what is the seeding going to look like for the Big Ten tournament? And what does this mean this final week ahead? Some teams have 2 games. Some teams have 1 game left. That's it. Everyone's played at least 18 games in the Big Ten. So this is it. This is the final week ahead. Then the Big Ten tournament, then Selection Sunday. Boom. Then it's go time. So it's all about the future now. Looking
back.
Yeah,
just so you know, youngster, when you recap, I am not going to actually give any tidbits about the games. Like you said, right now with 2 weeks to go, I don't think it comes down to, so-and-so did this in that game or this team beat that team. I really want to spend more time talking when we get to the standings about some things that are going on here, their overall body of work. So I'm not going to comment on any of the games. You just go through the recap. Don't even expect me to jump in. Unless you say something that sparks a little trigger in my brain, then I'll interrupt. But otherwise, just cruise through last week's results.
Sounds good. I'll go very quickly through the top 25, and then I will recap last week's before getting into the standings. I think that almost makes more sense. Usually I flip it around. But I think that almost makes more sense because we talk about games this past week, but more in depth. But this week we will not. We'll breeze through it. AP top 25, not that it matters because it's the AP. It's not the NCAA selection committee. So Michigan's at 7, Michigan State 9, Purdue 11. Purdue just keeps on winning. We'll get to that. Wisconsin 21, Maryland 24. We finally only have 5 Big Ten teams because Iowa pooed the bed, and they went 2-0. I think they're only on a 2-game losing streak. So they went 0-2. Surprise, surprise. Not surprise, surprise, but that's foreshadowing, I guess. Not really foreshadowing because I'm already telling you. I can't think of the word. But cat out of the bag, Iowa went 0-2 this past week. We'll talk more about it, what it means, that yada, yada, in a bit. But Iowa dropped from the top 25, so only 5 teams in the AP top 25 from the Big Ten. We'll talk more about it when it comes to bracketology, really, and what all these sites are saying about it. But recapping last week, February 25th, Monday, there was nothing. Tuesday, Indiana was at home to Wisconsin, played it to overtime, double overtime, actually. I didn't watch a second of the game, unfortunately. I didn't expect it to be a double overtime upset. Indiana beating Wisconsin, and this is the start of something potentially very interesting for Indiana. At least that's what the experts are thinking. So, again, we'll talk more about Indiana and their future and what kind of is ahead for them and the possibilities that are ahead for them. But Indiana at home against Wisconsin picked up a huge upset right there. On Tuesday, Ohio State at home against Iowa. Boom, another upset. Ohio State won by 20. It was 90-70. The coach, Fran McCaffrey, Iowa's coach, got tossed from this game. He was pissed off, basically. So Iowa, like I said, they went 0-2 this week, and just this is not the time for the wheels to kind of unravel off your cart going into March. You don't want to start a losing streak and, have bad things start happening to you at this time, but it is only 1 week. It's only 2 games, so not going to incredibly overreact. But, again, I'll get to bracketology and where people think Iowa is right now. And Iowa was that team that I thought could potentially get screwed when it comes to seeding. And it's almost looking like it could end up be that way thanks to the way they're playing, not because of outside factors, but they're doing it themselves. Wednesday, the 27th, Purdue at home against Illinois. Purdue won by 17 is what it is. Penn State at home against Maryland. Penn State won this game by 17 points. That's Penn State beat Maryland. Penn State was at home by 17. So Maryland took certainly a little tumble there. Maryland also went 0-2. They dropped in the standings. I'll get to that. But, yeah, Maryland, Iowa, both lost both games this past week. Again, not the time to be skidding, but, shows what Penn State is, shows what even the bottom of this conference is. It's really not that bad. You can be the top 25 team by 17 points. That's the bottom of this conference. So goes to show you what the Big Ten is this year. Thursday, the 28th, Michigan beat Nebraska at home. Michigan was at home. They won by 29 points. Minnesota went on the road and beat Northwestern. Minnesota really needed that win. Things would have really started looking ugly for them, but went on the road, won 62-50. That was important for them. Friday the 1st, no games. Saturday the 2nd, Indiana, again, at home against Michigan State. Indiana sweeps Michigan State this season, wins 63-62. That's why people are starting to talk about Indiana. Then up and down in the sense that when they're up, they're really up. And when they're down, they could lose 6-7 straight games. So it's been a nightmare of a season, but when they're getting on a little roll, you can tell because they'll beat Wisconsin and Michigan State back-to-back, which not many teams can do that. So it goes to show you why Indiana was pre-ranked in the top 25 to start this season. They're not supposed to be a bad team. They've just been injury-riddled and not playing good basketball. So it's looked like crap if you look at standing, realistically, in short. Also on Saturday, Purdue at home against Ohio State. Carson Edwards scores 25 points. Purdue wins by 35 against Ohio State. Purdue 2-0. Purdue keeps winning. Purdue has won 5 straight now. I'll get to them in the standings very quickly here. Wisconsin at home against Penn State. Wisconsin bounced back, got a win against Penn State, 61-57. So helps alleviate the loss to Indiana earlier in the week. Rutgers won on the road to Iowa and won by 14. Not kidding. So, Rutgers, if Troy was to interrupt me at some point during this recap, I would assume it was right now. So he's holding himself back right now. I know that much. But Rutgers, by winning this game, 14-14 overall, that's what you need to be, is 500. So, again, we'll get to these teams more in the standings, but Rutgers went on the road and beat Iowa by 14 points. That was massive for both teams, positive and negative. Sunday, Michigan went to Maryland, won 69-62. I watched every second of the game. I recorded that sucker. I really wanted to watch it, and Michigan just did what Michigan does. Bruno Fernando is really good, but never really dominated, took over. It's kind of a lot like last year, in my opinion, where Fernando is a really good player. You can tell he's going to be really good at the next, not necessarily really good at the next level, but you can tell he belongs in the NBA. But there are certain games where he can dominate and he just doesn't. And he puts up 12 points, 10 rebounds, and it's like, you should have had 18 and 15. You know? So it's just Maryland is just not on the same level as Michigan and Michigan State. I think that's what a 20-game schedule can do is you really get to tell what these teams are over the course of 20 games. 16, and you don't play certain, really good teams on the road like Nebraska last year. Who knows how good Nebraska was last year? Maybe we're finding out this year thanks to a 20-game schedule. I don't know. But a 20-game schedule kind of lets you see who's really good, who's average, who's below average, who's really not, belonging with the rest. Like now Northwestern in the standings is 2 games back of everyone. And they're at the very bottom. It's like, Northwestern's, is what it is. But, so, also, last game on Sunday, Northwestern went to Illinois and lost 81-76. Illinois, I think this is their third guard that scored like 25-plus points in a game this year. It just goes to show what Illinois is trying to do, and they're trying to have a bunch of guards run up and down the floor and score points, and at times they certainly do it, and they do it well. So they're right there, a game behind Ohio State and Minnesota in the standings. That's it for recapping. Now
we get to go to the standings, and yes, youngster, I was holding myself back the whole time. I said I wasn't going to interrupt you, and I didn't. I'm very proud of myself.
I'm impressed.
I almost did interrupt you a couple times, and I'm like, nope, not do it. I'm going to let him get through these buggers, and let's get to the standings because there's a lot to talk about, a lot of action in the Big Ten. But before we start breaking it all down, just go through. Instead, we won't talk about any. Just go through the standings, and then we'll start again at the top and kind of go team by team. What we're thinking here, and then I guess we can put their bracketology next to it when you're done with the standings. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me. Purdue at number 1, alone atop the conference, 15-3. Michigan is number 2 at 15-4. So there's no team with 3 losses in this conference except for Purdue. Purdue is number 1. Michigan is number 2 at 15-4. Michigan State's a half game back at 14-4. Those two teams play each other to end the regular season. So that will likely decide which team could potentially be number 1 or number 2, and obviously number 3 in this conference when it comes to seeding for the Big Ten tournament. Next week, But yeah, Purdue 1, Michigan 2, Michigan State 3. Wisconsin's at 12-6, so they're a couple games behind 4-loss teams like Michigan and Michigan State. So Wisconsin's the 4 right now, which is big because that gets you a double bye. Maryland is 5 at 12-7, so they've got 1 game left. Wisconsin's got 2. Maryland's behind them by half a game, 1 game in the loss column, which, potentially is obviously the difference maker there. So, excuse me, that battle for the 4 is kind of important, depending on how you look at it for the double bye, instead of a single bye, which Maryland would get. As the 5 seed, Iowa the 6 right now at 10-8. Again, they had a chance to be 12-6, and right there with Wisconsin for a double bye. But instead, they lost 2 straight games this past week. Ohio State flip it at 8-10. Minnesota also at 8-10. Everywhere I look bracketology-wise, both these teams are in. Minnesota saved themselves a little bit. Ohio State was, kind of interesting this past week because Ohio State won by 20 against Iowa and then followed it with a loss to Purdue by 35. So it goes to show you what Ohio State is, in my opinion. But Ohio State would be the 7, Minnesota the 8, Rutgers is 9 at 7-11, Illinois tied with them at 7-11, and then you get to Indiana at 6-12, Nebraska 5-13, Penn State 5-13, Northwestern 3-15. So Northwestern's got work to do if they want to finish not at the bottom of the conference. But so Purdue, Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin are the double bye teams right now. Maryland, Iowa, Ohio State, Minnesota would be the single bye teams. And then you've got Rutgers, Illinois, Indiana, Nebraska, Penn State, Northwestern making up the bottom 6. So, yeah, that's that.
So, Kevin, I'm going to go circle all the way back. Rutgers played one game this weekend, they won.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a loyal listener to the show, I said mark it down last week. Did I not, youngster? I said Rutgers will make the NIT.
Yep.
And I even texted you after their win because you mentioned it. They're now at 500. Now they don't have the easiest road, and there's a couple of ways they could do this. They could go 2-0 to end the regular season and lose their first game in the Big Ten. It'd still be 500. That would make them NIT bound.
Yeah.
Or they could go 1-1 at the end of the regular season, and then go 1-1 in the Big Ten, which actually is more realistic in my mind. They still would have to play and basically, I guess, get an upset in one of their last 2 games. I can't imagine they'd be favored. But
they get Penn State at home. Like on March 6th, that's Wednesday this week, they're at home against Penn State.
I'm going to tell you what, though, youngster, this Penn State team, even though Rutgers might have a better conference record, we've talked about it all year. Penn State is, in my mind, on paper, and maybe even skill-wise, better than Rutgers. I mean, Penn State only lost at Wisconsin by 4.
Mm-hmm. And
Penn State took care of Maryland at home. So Penn State is actually not that bad of a team.
No.
For a bottom-dwelling team in the Big Ten, I don't know if I want to play them once you get into the bye teams. If Penn State would advance out of the bracket and into where we have the single buys, I don't know if I want to play Penn State.
You know it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
You can obliterate Ohio State. You can obliterate Indiana. You can, Minnesota can play terrible. Iowa can lose by 20 to anyone. Penn State's always in the game.
Well, we talked about Penn State. What happens is they give up that run. They give up that 14-2 run, and then they just don't have the firepower to come back. Yeah. But they're going to play hard-nosed defense. And I know everybody's saying, oh, coach has to get fired at Penn State. That's last year because the team is underachieved. They're still playing hard for them, if that's the case. And they're going to play tough. What happens, though, is the really good teams, and sometimes a bad team, will go on that 14-2 run, and Penn State just doesn't have the firepower to come back and overtake that. And then it's so much energy, Kevin. You know this, being a basketball player. When you give up a 14-2 run, I don't know why that's sticking in my mind, but 14-2 is sticking in my mind. You give up a 14-2 run, And then to overcome that, to claw your way back and tie the game, you exert so much energy to get back into the game, and now you have to go on a run yourself. So you've exerted almost extra energy because there's part of you that's playing a little, I guess, a little more intense because you're like, we're down, we got to play. And it's just, not only do you have to overcome that run you gave up, now you have to go on a run of your own to take the lead.
I was going to say, you're not only catching up 5 baskets, a huge run of your own, or just beating the other team by 12 the rest of the game, but then you have to win the rest of the game after that to win the game. So it's tough. It's difficult.
But I just wanted to throw the Rutgers thing out there, and I've been on the Rutgers bandwagon since the beginning of the year, Kevin. I actually started on Rutgers bandwagon last year. Maybe it is because they're the redheaded stepchild in the conference. That they're the one that's out there that probably doesn't belong. And so I'm going to jump on their bandwagon. I've been a fan for 2 years of Rutgers. And I said this about the program. This is a team that will 1 year they catch lightning in a bottle? Maybe. It happens to a lot of teams. Rutgers is not going to be a perennial top half of the conference team. However, they're 7-11. So you can't just brush them under the rug and say, oh, here's a win when we play Rutgers. There's 7 teams that found out, guess what, that doesn't happen. But they're not going to be a perennial top conference team year in and year out.
Right.
But going to the NIT would be huge for a Rutgers program.
Yeah, I was going to say Steve Pickiel is the head coach. He's done fantastic, and this is only his 3rd year. His first 2 years, they won 3 games apiece. Now they've won 7 in year 3. It's like, okay, you're seeing improvement now. If they were to win 3 again this year or 2 games in conference, it's like, I don't know if this is the right coach for the job. But to more than double your win total, potentially make NIT, CIT, whatever, it's like, okay. I think they're a lock for the CIT right now, even if they lose the last 3. Because I believe you can be under 500 to be in the CIT. I'm not even sure, to be honest. I know the NIT is not difficult to make, but there are a lot of bids that are taken up by the teams that get snubbed, like the 24-8 team that doesn't win their conference tournament and just doesn't make the NCAA tournament. Those are the teams that it's like, okay, those are the 1 seeds, those are the 2 seeds in the NIT, and you only have 8 seeds. So it's like you've got some snubs there. You got some snubs that finish, 10-10 in the ACC, and it just doesn't work out. Or the 3rd place Pac-12 team this year, they'll be in the NIT. The 4th place Pac-10 team, 12 team, whoever gets left out from the Big 12, that's like, they're in the NIT. There's only so many spots. So I'm not saying Rutgers is locked for the NIT at this point, but as long as they're right on Ohio State and Minnesota's coattails, and it's a feel-good story, and it's like, this program's going to be ecstatic to be in our tournament, I don't know how you leave them out. And it's a Big Ten team. That's just another positive. So I'm assuming they're going to play in the postseason somewhere. But, just wanted to bring up Steve Pickiel, and just obviously the job he's done in year 3 is impressive.
I brought it up last week, Kevin, and I wasn't being a smarty pants. The guy should get legitimate consideration for Coach of the Year. Mm-hmm. He really should. You just mentioned it. 3-3, now 7. Possibly could be 8. I don't think it'll be 9. But wouldn't that be something if they finish 9-11? If they finish 9-11, I might actually have to start a Facebook page to make him Coach of the Year. I'm just saying what he's done there in the Big Ten, coming from a school that is not known for basketball, and a team that, again, if Rutgers advances in this Big Ten tournament, Kevin, do you really want to play Rutgers in that first game when you're one of those first-round bye teams? I don't know if you do. And that's a scary team. That team in Penn State, I don't know if I want to play either one of them if they advance.
The only team I'm fine with playing is Northwestern. Like, Indiana's got talent. Illinois is annoying to play against if they hit their shots. Rutgers is not easy, obviously. Nebraska has senior guards and senior players on their team. Penn State has talent, is always tough. Like, literally the only team that's, you could say, is potentially bad is Northwestern. And they still have talent, but they've lost 10 straight for a reason. You know, that team's just completely trended downward over the last 2 months. But these other teams have buys.
Let's move to the top of the conference, Kevin, and these double buys. Maryland losing, allowing Wisconsin now to take that half-game lead to get to number 4. Like you said, it depends on what school you come from. Is it, a double bye, is that good, or is it too much rest? If you're playing well, some teams will say, well, I just want to get back and play, because isn't it, if you have a double bye, isn't it like 2 weeks off? You get like almost 10 days off or something like that before games from the last regular season game?
Let me look up the Big Ten tournament.
While you're doing that, I'll just keep talking.
The one thing I'll say, though, is that if you only get a single bye, you still have to win 4 games in 4 days. If you get a double bye, then it's just 3 games in 3 days. So to win 4 straight games in 4 straight days against what is going to be at least decent competition, even in the first game for you, that's just tough. I feel like you'd rather have that extra day of rest. But that's
I would. And that's where I'm going. I'd much rather have it. But some schools of thought will say, hey, if I'm playing well, I don't want to have that.
Yeah.
But the more rest, especially the way I look at it, here's the thing, Kevin. If I'm a Purdue, a Michigan State, a Michigan, Wisconsin, does it, to me, I want to play well in the Big Ten tournament, but I don't need to win the Big Ten tournament. I don't need to win the Big Ten tournament to get to where I need to be. I need to get to the tournament, and I need to be healthy and rested.
Right.
So if we've talked about this, pretty much 6 teams are locked into the tournament. Do they want to play well? Do they want to win the Big Ten tournament? Sure, it's great. But when you look at it, you're going to play a lot of games in a short amount of time. Then you have to turn around in 4 or 5 days, and then it all counts. The marbles start counting.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you want to, if you exit early, that's good. But if you're one of those teams that is locked into the NCAA tournament, winning the Big Ten title really doesn't mean a whole lot other than possibly getting you a better seed, which could benefit you in the long run.
I'll say this, that I'm a Duke fan, and if Duke lost in the first round of the ACC tournament, I'd be perfectly fine with that, even if they lose a 1 seed and get to a 2 because of it. As long as Zion gets even more rest, that's the end goal. And these teams like Wisconsin, Maryland, these like 4, 5, 6 seeds, how far can you really jump up? How far can you really go down based on the Big Ten tournament? Maybe you go down a seed, maybe you get completely screwed and get down 2, but it's like, you're a 6 seed instead of a 4, and so, your first round game's a little harder. Your second round game is against a 3 instead of a 5. It's more difficult potentially, but it's not the end of the world. So to have
Kevin, I'll add this: being a Badger fan, like you, I mean, I'd like to see them at least win 1 game in the Big Ten, and especially if they get the double bye. And then if they lost their second game, like you,
right,
I'd be perfectly fine with that. You know why? Wisconsin plays a tenacious defense, and it's hustle defense, so they're playing hard and they're exerting a lot of energy. And we talked about having a role player that needs to step up to take the pressure off Ethan Happ. What do those guys do on the outside? They're jump shooters. What's the first thing that goes in the body in basketball, Kevin? Your legs. And when your legs go, you can't be an effective jump shooter. So the more rest you have, especially if you're a team like Wisconsin, it benefits you, and that's why I wanted to move to the top 4. A double bye for Wisconsin, to me, would be extremely important for that team the way that they play. To get that extra day of rest, that will do wonders for them. But, again, I'm not even sure if I want Wisconsin to make a run to the Big Ten title game, Kevin. If they take care of business here at the end of the regular season, win one game in the Big Ten tournament, they're pretty much a lock. Like you said, where are they going to be seeded? 4 to 7 somewhere? 4 to 6? They probably won't fall to a 7 unless, like you said, the wheels fall off the cart and they lost their last 2 regular season games, lost the first game in the Big Ten tournament. Maybe they fall to a 7? Maybe. I don't even know if they would if that happened.
No, I know.
A lot would depend on other things across the country.
Yeah.
But now I'm kind of like jumping on your side here with the rest. Jump shooters want the rest. They want their legs rested. So a lot of basketball, the way it's being played now too, Kevin, a lot of it is jump shooting, right?
Yeah.
So why not take the rest? But I'm looking at that top 4. It's going to Maryland and Wisconsin going to battle it out. Iowa's got a tough road to get up to number 4. That would be. I'm not even sure if they have the tiebreaker at that point. It would be a 3-way tie. I don't know how the 3-way tie would work.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. The one thing I want to say is that for Wisconsin, Maryland, I'm on that. If you're like Iowa now, again, let the cat out of the bag. Some places have them as an 8 seed now. And so you just want to keep winning in the Big Ten tournament. I don't want an exit and become an 8 or 9 seed, an early exit, because that means you're playing a 1 seed in the second round and you're screwed, most likely. It's not definite, but it's very difficult at that point. If you're Iowa, you want to win all your games possible. Like Ohio State, Minnesota fighting for their lives, Indiana even possibly fighting for their lives. But like Wisconsin, Maryland, it's just, these seeds right now are kind of what they are. There's not a ton of jostling to do, but there's a little bit. And for like Iowa to be a 6 seed instead of an 8, that's a huge difference. That's a monstrous difference. So unless you got anything, Troy, I'll get into bracketology a little bit.
Well, I want to get your thought here. If Wisconsin would win the Big Ten tournament, what are they going to be seeded, a 4? Are they really going to move up to a 3 seed if they won the Big Ten tournament? Maybe.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Not likely.
Right, at best.
So, I mean, it comes down. You never want to lose a game. But if I'm coaching, maybe if the game is getting a little bit out of hand when we're in the semis, maybe I let my starters rest an extra 2 minutes. Oh, now we're down 10 instead of down 6. Or we're down 14 instead of 10. It's one of those things I wanted to bring it up. For those teams that get the double bye, pretty much they're locked. And even like you said, Iowa, they're pretty much locked to get in the tournament. But again, if they start losing some games, like you said, then you're going to be an 8 or a 9 seed, and then you get to play a number 1 ranked team, a number 1 seed in the second round. That's not an easy road where you want to go.
No.
All right,
no.
Continue. Where are we going now?
So bracketology-wise, just to put some numbers by these teams' names, looking at CBS, looking at ESPN, just because those are the most credible in terms of where these guys finish in terms of getting teams right as to where they're seeded / getting in the tournament in general. Michigan a 2 seed, Michigan State a 2 seed. Some places have Purdue as a 4, but I think both ESPN and CBS have Purdue as a 3 now. Again, they've won 7 straight, I think, right? 5 straight. 5 straight. Again, 22-7 overall, 15-3 in the Big Ten. They're the number 1 team in the Big Ten. Could potentially win the regular season. So that's obviously monstrous. Purdue being a 3 seed is certainly higher than I would have expected. Coming into this year, Wisconsin, again, either 4 or 5, depending where you look. Maryland a 5 in both CBS, ESPN. Iowa 7 or 8, depending on where you look. Ohio State, Minnesota, basically around that 10-11 mark. And then I think it's ESPN has Indiana as the next 4 out. Again, Indiana, when you look at their wins that they have, they've got a bunch of losses, obviously. But when you look at their wins, it's like there's going to be no other – I assume Indiana doesn't make the tournament, but there's going to be no other team that misses the tournament that has better wins than Indiana has. That's not to say Indiana deserves to be in, because, again, they're 15-14 overall. They're one game higher than Rutgers, and they're behind Rutgers in the Big Ten standings. But, Indiana can play with anybody. They've shown that this year. Like, when they're healthy-ish and they hit their shots and they've got NBA talent on their team, they can play with anybody. They've shown it this past week. Like, for instance, against the AP top 25 teams this year, they're 4-6. Ohio State's 1-6. I mean, Ohio State's going to get in, but I don't necessarily think Indiana – on any given night, Indiana's better than Ohio State. Is Ohio State more consistent throughout the year? Yeah, absolutely. But, again, Indiana's high is a lot higher than most teams. Outside of the top 6 in this conference, which are all, to me, really good teams, Indiana's right there with, and on a high, obviously, they can beat, they swept Michigan State this year. So they're obviously potentially really good. They're just not consistent. So, again, I think they missed the tournament. But that's kind of the situation with Indiana. We kind of saw that with Nebraska a couple weeks ago, where it's like, if some things break their way, they could make it. For Indiana, it's that they're that team now, where if things break their way, they win some games, then it gets interesting. Their last 2 are at Illinois and at home against Rutgers. Those are both winnable.
And that puts in, what does that put their record at then, Kevin?
Gets them to 8-12 in the Big Ten, and then 17-14 overall. And you always want to get to 20, but it's not a necessity. It's not a, in a Sharpie you have to get to 20. It's just historically ridiculously difficult to make the tournament. But historically, there's never been a 20-game conference season. And historically, who knows where this Big Ten, obviously the committee, when they first revealed their rankings, really thinks this conference is good. To go through a 20-game gauntlet and to go 8-12 and to win your last 4, then it's like, okay, maybe this team does deserve it. Over a very average Big 12.
They would have to advance, Kevin, to the weekend. They'd have to get to 19. They're not getting in at 18. So they'd have to win their last 2. They'd have to win their first 2 games to get to 19. Yeah. Because the third game they're going to play a top 25. More, if we go with chalk. If we go chalk in the Big Ten tournament, they're going to be playing a top 25 team in that third game.
Yeah.
And if they play that game close, then they would have won 6 out of their last 7. And they'd be, 18-16 at that point? I mean, it's not a great record.
18-15.
18-15. Not a great record. For them to get consideration at that point, then what they need to hope for, if that's what happened, they would have to hope that every single one of those automatic bids is going to the team that needs to have the automatic bid. And what I mean by that is no big upsets in these tournaments. I mean, they can't have you can't have like a Pitt in the ACC. Not that they would do it, but a Pitt run through and win the ACC tournament. Because then, oops, there's a team that wasn't even on the radar, but they won their conference tournament, and now they get the automatic bid. So every one of these automatic bids would have to go to a team that's already considered a lock in the tournament. Yeah. Because if just 1 or 2 are upset, and all of a sudden those spots are filling up, Indiana will be on the outside looking in. But I could see why you would give them legitimate consideration if they win their last 2, win 2 in the Big Ten tournament. I mean, maybe. But a lot of things, again, we always say this, a lot of things across the country would have to fall into place too, not only in the Big Ten.
Yeah. A couple examples, Nevada in the Mountain West Conference. You don't want the 18-12 team winning the Mountain West Conference championship. Nevada's getting in regardless. Wofford is another team randomly this year, like a 7 or 8 seed. If they lose their conference tournament, they're still getting in somewhere. That just steals a bid for you. So that's if things go right for Indiana, they're still going to have to be hopeful. They'd have to pull multiple upsets to really be like, yeah, this team needs to get in because this team's hot. This team's beating really good teams. So they can play their way in, I think, without winning the Big Ten championship, which is crazy to say. But it took a week of beating both Wisconsin and Michigan State. So you don't expect that, obviously. But yeah, they win.
Now, Kevin, the way that this year's been going, again, Nebraska was that hot hoopla team when they pulled the same thing, and then what happened? They went to Penn State and pooed the bed.
Right.
And again, we've talked about Rutgers. You can't fall asleep on them. Illinois. If you think you're just going to cruise by Illinois,
right? They're traveling to Illinois. They're traveling to Illinois. Illinois at home and confidence and shooting the ball well, that's not an easy win at all for anyone. We've seen Illinois beat really good teams, let alone Indiana, who's been up and down to say the least. I mean, Indiana is 3-5, 7, 9, 11, 12. They're 3-12 in their last 15 games. And yet here they are potentially making the NCAA tournament. Because that's how good their non-conference was. I mean, they've got wins over Marquette. They played Duke. They beat Louisville, who's in the tournament. They beat Butler. They've got legitimate wins. And then in the Big Ten, they swept Michigan State again. They beat Wisconsin. And then who knows, in the Big Ten tournament. So especially once you get to that, oh, look, they won 6 of their last 7. They deserve to be in right now. Look, they won 7 of the last 8. Look, they upset. They've potentially they could beat Michigan State 3 times this season, or they could beat Michigan State twice and beat Michigan. I mean, so it comes down to matchups and what Indiana can do in the Big Ten tournament. But Indiana's got a shot, which certainly didn't think that was the case a week ago. But
no, we didn't.
Yeah. So. As far as bracketology stuff, I mean, I don't have anything else. We can look at the week ahead. I want to say this, though, that the Big Ten tournament, I think it was last year where they had that huge layoff, and then they went to the 20-game schedule this year. And so now, like, Wednesday, March 13th is the start of the tournament. The Big Ten tournament ends Sunday, March 17th. That's Selection Sunday. So, again, we were talking about rest. If you win or lose the Big Ten championship game on Sunday, you could be playing on Thursday, your first-round game, the NCAA tournament. That's only 3 days off, which for the Big Ten, that's like a normal, oh, gee, we only play, we have to wait till Thursday this week. We play Thursday, Sunday this week. I mean, that happens for Big Ten teams. And that could be exactly what happens for the Big Ten tournament or the NCAA tournament. Oh, we play Thursday, Saturday. Oh, we have to wait till Friday, but we play again Sunday. It's one of those weeks. I mean, you just have 2 or 3 days off, and then boom, NCAA tournament, right there. So I mean, you're really not getting much rest if you're making the Big Ten championship game for these teams. So just food for thought. There's no historical data backing. It's huge to have a bunch of time in between your tournament and the NCAA tournament, or it's huge to win your conference tournament, and then you'll do really well on the NCAA tournament. It matters year by year, team by team, obviously. But again, I think seeding-wise for some of these teams, it's a lot more important for others. Like Iowa needs to win a lot more than Wisconsin, Maryland do. Wisconsin, Maryland, 4 through 6. Iowa, you want to get out of that 8-9 if possible. That's just just makes more logical sense. But anyway, that's all I got. Unless you got anything before this last week of action.
What was that, youngster? I'm on that part of the road right now. I didn't quite catch all that.
Basically, just unless you got anything to add on, Big Ten tournament stuff, rest stuff.
No, I mean, if we had loyal listeners that I knew would listen for like 3 hours, I would just go down every team and just talk about stuff about the team. But we don't. We're trying to keep our show, right around an hour and 15 minutes. So Nope, I got nothing else because I can just keep talking.
Yeah, we're already over an hour. So moving on to this last week of Big Ten action.
That's because Alex Hornibrook took up all our time.
Oh, I know. Terrible Hornibrook. Can't wait for the Mertz era to begin. Anyway, Monday the 4th, no games. Tuesday the 5th, Michigan State at home against Nebraska. This matters seeding-wise for Michigan State for sure. They're trying to hold on to that two-seed spot. They've been a 2 seed for the last 2 months, it seems like. So they're not right there knocking on the 1 seed door, but they don't. They're more close to a 3 than a 2 or a 1. So every game certainly matters. If you're Michigan State, having the wheels fall off could mean you fall to a 3 seed. So could be a huge difference when it comes to the NCAA tournament. Also on Tuesday, Purdue at Minnesota. This would absolutely lock. If they were to beat Purdue Tuesday night, Minnesota's in the NCAA tournament. It doesn't matter what happens in the Big Ten tournament. If they beat Purdue, they're in. That's a lock. They're not going to be expected to beat Purdue, but if they do pull that upset at home, they're in. Done. So huge game potentially for Minnesota there. On Wednesday, Penn State at Rutgers. This is, certainly
this
Rutgers.
This is huge for Rutgers.
Yeah.
Is that game, does it have television on by that one, Kevin? Because if
BTN,
it does,
BTN,
is it on BTN for real?
Yeah.
You're not just playing with me.
BTN Wednesday night at 7 p.m. I
am DVRing that son of a gun.
There you go.
I really am, and again, this is one of those games we sit here and talk about. Oh, the Michigan States, Wisconsin, Purdue's, the Iowas, the Maryland. Penn State Rutgers, I think, is going to be one heck of a game.
I agree.
Like I just mentioned, Penn State's a good team. They just have some inconsistent flaws, and Rutgers plays their tail off. Yet neither of these teams, the reality is neither of these teams could be in the postseason. But this is a huge game. If one of them wants to get into the postseason, maybe both can make it. I don't know. But for Rutgers, a win against Penn State, when's the last time, 29 games into a season, Rutgers basketball can say we are over 500?
Yeah.
Probably long before they joined the Big Ten. And it certainly probably has not happened since they've joined the Big Ten. But no, I'm not kidding. I am DVRing that game and I'm going to watch it.
There you go.
Maybe not the whole thing. I might fast forward through some of it, but I know that I won't be able to sit down and watch it on Wednesday night.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Wednesday night, also on BTN, Ohio State at Northwestern. If Ohio State wants to avoid disaster, they go to Northwestern and win. I'll just say that. If you start losing to Northwestern, is that Ohio State's last game? I don't think so. No, they got 2. But if Ohio State went 0-2 this week and then lost again in the Big Ten tournament, finish 18-14, 8-13 in conference altogether, they're probably screwed. So
I would agree.
Realistically, huge game for Ohio State as well Wednesday night at Northwestern. On Thursday, Wisconsin at home against Iowa. This is absolutely massive for Iowa. Wouldn't kill Wisconsin to lose it, but every game's important.
Well, it kind of would, though, Kevin, because it would knock them out of that double bye.
You're right. 100% right. I'm wrong. Yeah, Wisconsin's fighting for that double bye.
Now, granted, Maryland could lose. Iowa would have to take, and again, I don't know the 3-team tiebreaker.
Yeah.
And that 3-team tiebreaker won't matter if Wisconsin wins.
Right.
But I gave you my little 2 cents of why Wisconsin needs a double bye. Just the way they play. The extra rest is so important. So to me, Kevin, that game for Wisconsin, it's that one game to be like, do we deserve to be at the top of the conference? If so, this is the game they've got to win. We've seen them drop games to lesser opponents. So I want to really see this game and see what Wisconsin's going to do here at the end of the year and see if they're tournament ready.
And this is a chance for Iowa to bounce back off that ridiculous. I think McCaffrey is also suspended for this game. He was suspended 2. I think his first was the game after Ohio State. So I think this is the second of his 2-game suspension. So I don't think he's going to be coaching in this game, which difficult to win at Wisconsin regardless, but especially without your head coach there. So
yeah, and like you said, we're with Iowa and the little debacle last week. If they drop this game, it's not going to knock them out of the tournament because it's Wisconsin, a loss to Wisconsin at Wisconsin.
Yeah,
but
they're in. Even if they lose out, they're in.
But again, Kevin, another loss, and now you start looking at bracketology and seeding.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be on that 8-9 line. Okay, well then you're still kind of screwed in the first round. But now all of a sudden, what happens if you fall down to maybe a 10? I don't know if they'd fall as low as a 12, but if they lost their last 2 and lost in the Big Ten tournament, I mean, think about that. Now you're moving from a middle of the pack seed to a really crap seed where you could lose in the first round.
Right.
But
yeah, if you're a 6 seed, you avoid 1s and 2 seeds until the Elite 8, I believe. I think. Because you're playing an 11 in the first round, and then in the second you're probably playing a 3. And then, I guess you'd play a 2 in the Sweet 16. But that's a 6 seed. If you're 8-9, you're obviously playing a 1 in the second round. And then even if you're down at a 2 or a 10, you're probably playing a 2 seed in the second round. So that's kind of what I anticipated what would happen to Iowa. But this is not the way I thought that it would go down, unfortunately. But Thursday night, Illinois at home against Indiana. Indiana's fighting for their lives. They need every win possible, realistically. So huge game for Indiana Thursday night. On Friday, 1 game, Minnesota at Maryland. Again, if Minnesota can pull off an upset here, they're in. Very, very tough week for Minnesota. What is that, Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. Tuesday, Minnesota's at home against Purdue, and then Friday they're on the road against Maryland. So they'd be 18 and 13 if they lost both. They'd be 8 and 12 in the Big Ten. It really could come down to the Big Ten tournament for them, just based on scheduling.
Well, Kevin, so, we've talked about this. We've got 6 that are locked, and the 2 teams that we've talked about now right here on this show, if they drop both this week and lose the first round of the Big Ten, I'll use your words. They're screwed.
Yeah, 18 and 14 at the point, 8 and 13 in the Big Ten altogether.
Yeah, you're going to have to win a couple in the Big Ten tournament. But if you lose that first round game in the Big Ten tournament, and they're not going to be gimmies. Like we said, maybe the only one where you want to say, well, I'll really tilt the needle one way is if you play Northwestern.
Right.
That would be the only game.
And Northwestern would play the 11 seed, which right now would be, let's see, that's Indiana. And Indiana's fighting for their lives. So, yeah, I would assume no one's seeing Northwestern other than that 11 seed, to be honest.
All right, carry on. More weekend games.
Yes. Let's see, Saturday. Purdue at Northwestern. This is, potentially to wrap up the Big Ten regular season title for Purdue. If that's what's on the line, I don't see
What
them
is that
losing.
going to be, a 30-point? What's the line on that one, 26?
It doesn't say. I'd have to look more into it.
They're not going to get a 26-point line. I'm just being a goofball. Yeah. But Purdue could put a hurt on them. I mean, they could just put a walloping hurt on them. That's it.
And Purdue is close to Northwestern location-wise, and again, as I've said before on this show, Northwestern's home court advantage for men's basketball not really existent. So that's not a shot at Northwestern. That's just what I've experienced firsthand. I haven't gone to 20 Northwestern home basketball games, but I've gone to a couple, and it's not. It's lackluster. I'll say that much. Also on Saturday, if you want to really watch a game between, potential championship level teams, Michigan at Michigan State. I assume Michigan State wins this and sweeps Michigan for the season because, again, I still think Michigan State is the better, well-rounded overall team. as far as seeding, could potentially mean a lot in the Big Ten tournament, especially for the NCAA tournament, be a 2 seed instead of a 3. That's, potentially what's at stake. And also something we haven't really ever talked about on the show, I don't think, this year, is it's not just, oh my God, I'm going to be a 3 seed instead of a 2. It's not just that. It's also your team being in potentially the Midwest or the East and being closer to home rather than traveling out west and playing a 2 seed out west. That's potentially the difference. Like, it's not just being a 2 seed instead of a 3 or a 4 instead of a 5 or a 7 instead of an 8. It's location too. Like, these teams that are higher, like 2 seeds, 3 seeds, the NCAA wants to minimize their cost in planes and keep these bigger teams at home. That's what they want to do. So these teams seeded higher.
Kevin, the selection committee does take region into consideration.
It's not perfect at all.
They don't try to ship people across the country,
right?
If at all possible.
It's never, just to give a very quick example, it's never the best 1 seed gets the worst 2 seed, the second best 1 seed gets the second worst 2 seed. It never goes perfect like that. It's never 1, 8, 2, 7, 3, 6, 4, 5. It's never that. You always get location-based teams in their region. So it's a lot more than just the seeding like we always talk about on this show. So that's kind of the other thing. I'm not going to break this game down. It'll be interesting to hear about Nick Ward and his availability from an injury standpoint for the Big Ten tournament. That's just something to look for. I doubt he plays in this game against Michigan, but if he's there in the NCAA tournament, that's what obviously really matters. Just like Duke and Zion, Michigan State wants to be as healthy as possible, just like all these teams do, obviously. Michigan also, Charles Matthews had an injury. I don't think it's supposed to be serious, but he missed their last game, I think last 2, actually. So that's another injury to look out for in terms of just availability, something we'll obviously talk about on next week's show. But Charles Matthews for Michigan and Nick Ward for Michigan State, 2 little minor injuries to kind of keep tabs on. Sunday, last day of regular season for the Big Ten before next week's show, which next week we will have every single seed.
I'm all jacked up for next week already, Kevin.
Yep. Oh, yeah. But Sunday, quickly, Illinois at Penn State. That game could potentially mean something for – actually, no, it doesn't. Just kidding. Illinois can't get to 500 overall unless they were to – I think they'd have to win the Big Ten tournament just to get to 18.
Get out of the clouds, youngster. Get out of the clouds.
It's not happening, unfortunately. Moving on, Rutgers at Indiana. That's massive for both teams, as we've said already. That's noon on Sunday, also on BTN, Troy, if you want to watch both Rutgers games, both on BTN this week.
I don't know. I'm not sure what my Sunday holds.
Okay.
It might be holding a nice, cold, carbonated beverage.
Watching Rutgers basketball.
Watching Rutgers, Indiana.
Who would have thought? Nebraska at home against Iowa. Again, potentially huge for Iowa. It's going to be huge for Iowa. It's not potentially. It is huge for Iowa. Going on the road to play against a bunch of seniors on senior night, realistically. That's a very interesting game. And Iowa could, again, go 0-2 this week. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens to Iowa. Not just this week, Big Ten tournament, but NCAA tournament and where they're at. You could be a really good 9 or 10 seed. If you're a 1 seed and you see Iowa as like that 8-9, or you're a 2 and you see Iowa as a 10, I mean that's not good. Again, they'd have to lose 5 of the last 6, whatever it is, but it's very well possible just based on how the schedule is playing out and their coach being suspended. It's on them, but this is a very talented team that's been in the top 25 more often than not this year. So that's not a team you want to see in the first or second round. In general, potentially. Moving on. Last game, Wisconsin at Ohio State, 4:30 p.m. Doesn't give TV information, which is odd. Sunday, March 10th, 4:30 p.m., Wisconsin at Ohio State. Again, Ohio State, if they get this game, that to me probably locks them in. Same with Minnesota. If Minnesota pulls any upset this week, they're in. So huge games for them. And Wisconsin, we've already talked about with double bye stuff. But, again, next week's show, we will have our predictions for the Big Ten tournament. Again, it starts Wednesday, March 13th. Second round is Thursday, March 14th. Third round, Friday, March 15th. You get the point. Last day is on Selection Sunday, the 17th. The championship game on CBS. So we will go through every single game and our picks and have them recorded for the following week, and we'll tell you how terrible or how fantastic we do on next week's show for the Big Ten tournament.
Probably how terrible we did. I don't think we did really good last year, youngster.
I don't think so either. I don't think so.
I think we did. I think we did like really good, like through the first, like to get through the buys. I think and then we got to the quarters, and I think because there was a couple upsets last year, and so yeah, it kind of blew us away. But yeah, I can't wait. I cannot wait for that show because that means we're real close to March Madness. Woohoo! Yep. What else you got, youngster? I'm ready to wrap it up.
Nothing. Big Ten tournament, March 13th through 17th. Selection Sunday, March 17th, less than 2 weeks away, and then the NCAA tournament is March 21st. That's when it starts.
These are going to be some great shows for the next month. Make sure you find us on Twitter at TroyRobert967. The Captain Youngster is at and our show is at Youngster Old Man. Make sure you find us if you want to listen to any of our other shows. Feel free. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for listening in. We appreciate it. Enjoy.